Hey guys, Tom Barclay here at Craven Cottage after another bad defeat for Spurs. One of many this season, their 15th Premier League defeat in a pretty miserable league campaign, and one that felt somewhat inevitable in the end, despite Ange Postecoglou afterwards saying that it was a very close game. It was a close game, and it wasn't so much a bad performance, but it was one that gave a soft goal away, and that might be true to a certain extent, but I kind of felt like it was a certain inevitability about it. If anything, the game felt a little bit like a end of season match from Spurs' point of view. I don't know if there was much intensity. It obviously made a lot of changes, 7 changes in total, but now, yes, 15 defeats in the league this season, which is the most since the 08-09 campaign, infamous 2 points from 8 games, which starts of the season, which saw Juan de Ramos sacked, and there are 9 games to go, so they're bound to beat that record, underlining what a miserable season it has been this year. We'll get on to Ange's comments about it in a minute, but let's start off with sort of looking through the game. So like I said, 7 changes from the great win against Alkmaar, which preserved the Europa League, which is obviously what this campaign's all about now. We knew that anyway, but once again, you know, sort of underlined even more so after this particular performance. In came the likes of Mathys Tel at wide left, Brennan Johnson wide right, Bissouma in midfield, Archie Gray starting in midfield for the first time in the Premier League, I believe, starting at least there. Davis back in, the likes of Doggy starting, lots of changes, lots of sort of talking points going into the game, but not loads afterwards, I have to say. Let's start with Bissouma and Johnson, hooked at half-time for the second Premier League game running, hooked against Bournemouth in the 2-2 draw, and here as well. In fact, I believe Bissouma's been hooked 3 times in his last 5 games at Spurs. And I might as well just jump quickly to Ange's comments on him. He said he can let a game drift and he feels like he needs to be more dominant. He wasn't overly critical of the players he hooked, to be honest, in his quotes, but that was quite revealing, that comment. We know that Ange likes his team to be really dominant, really aggressive in the way they play, and that is set. The tone is set from the centre-backs, and it's key in the sort of holding midfield area. It just doesn't feel like Bissouma does it enough. And this felt like, to be honest, it felt like another nail in the coffin of Bissouma's sort of career at Spurs. It felt like in the summer, when he's got 1 year left, it already seemed like he was probably heading for the exit door. The way he's playing at the moment, it seems very likely that he will leave. He really needs to up it from here. The chances he's getting for Postecoglou, he's not taking. He's regularly being taken off. He's just not playing well enough, and he's not giving the team what they need. And for this system and to succeed under Postecoglou, if it is to work in the Premier League, it requires, as he says, far more dominance in the midfield area. It was interesting, Gray actually started as the number 6, which I was half looking at the team sheet, thinking Bentancur, Bissouma and Gray. I thought Gray might even play in an attacking midfield position like he has done for the England 21s, but it's not how it started. There were times throughout the game where he did move further forward, and then he went back into defence when Romero came off. But it was Gray starting there. I thought he did okay. I didn't think he did brilliantly. If anything, it probably showed why the sort of calls for him to definitely start there have been not misjudged, but he's not exactly, you know, gone in there like Spencer's done when he's finally played and gone, oh, it's obvious he should have always played there. He should have been played in that position quicker. He didn't exactly grab it with both hands. He gave the ball away at this time. It wasn't a really poor performance by any stretch, but it wasn't one that really captured the imagination from Archie Gray. But to be honest, the same could be said for a lot of the players. Johnson also hooked at half-time. I mean, I've been saying in recent weeks, I feel like he's much better as an impact player. I don't think he's technically good enough at the moment to start games, to play that well from the off. I don't think he's technically, I don't think that's his biggest strength. He's obviously the pace and getting in at the back stick. And when the team aren't sort of creating enough in that way, he can become a bit of a passenger. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. So maybe it's a confidence thing, I don't know, but it is a bit concerning from Postecoglou's point of view and Johnson's point of view that he keeps getting hooked at half-time. And when you watched Odegaard play the other day, he just looks a much better technical player when he's getting on the ball in tight spaces than Johnson. That is more his game, to be fair. Johnson's got that electric pace that Odegaard is quick, but he doesn't quite have that speed. So they do have different qualities. But yeah, another sort of concerning performance, I suppose, or outcome from Johnson's point of view, along with Bissouma. Mathys Tel, who's had a difficult time since signing for Spurs, obviously scored that brilliant sort of instinctive finish against Villa. in the FA Cup defeat, which is pretty much his only good moment, to be honest, in the games he's played. He started wide left here with Solanke. That did seem to help. Whether he proves to be a striker, a centre forward who's good enough to play in the Premier League through the middle remains to be seen. But right now, he definitely doesn't seem up to it in the physical stakes. But wide left, I thought he had some good moments. Had a few good moments, a couple of tricky dribbles, and showed a bit of skill. Showed a bit more about what he's about, I have to say. It wasn't perfect, but a few moments that kind of hinted a bit more about what he can bring when he gets a bit more confidence and a bit more adaptation to this league. And of course, probably Spurs' best chance came from a really good shot from him when Leno pushed it wide. This is in the second half. I think this is still at 0-0. Maddison, who's come on, chests it down, and Solanke's right there. And to be honest, his reactions, I think he would probably be disappointed his reaction isn't quite quick enough, and he steers it over. That was probably their best chance in a game that was, few on chances, and Tottenham didn't really do enough, in my opinion, from an attacking point of view to win the game anyway. But Tell, I think, I think we're not going to go overboard. It wasn't amazing, but he had some brighter moments, and hopefully something for him to build on. In the first half, I thought Fulham were unlucky not to get a penalty. Spurs definitely unlucky to not get a penalty as well, but I think it was evened up from what I believe was a foul on Raul Jimenez. At first, it looked like a bit of a theatrical fall to the ground from Jimenez when this ball comes in from Iwobi. Jimenez rises for it and then goes down rather theatrically under pressure from Spence. And it was a bit theatrical in the way he went down. That's probably why Andy Madley didn't give it. But watching it again, the highlights, I feel like Spence is definitely trying to shuffle him out of the way. And that is the reason he can't connect with the ball. So to me, in my mind, if it had been the other way around, I'm sure Spurs fans would have been raging if that wasn't a penalty. Obviously, it was kind of evened up in the second half when Bassi seems to bring down Bergvall in the box. And this is at 1-0 at this point, and it isn't given. So frustrations on both sides. First half was a pretty forgettable affair. If it wasn't for Cristiano Romero and his, I'm trying to work out what the right word is, antics, I suppose, but that seems like quite a pejorative term, quite negative. It's not always negative, it's just more like just the way he catches your eye, whether it be through crunching tackles, whether it be through putting his body on the line, the physical battles he has with other players. And there was one moment where the home crowd really enjoyed it, when Calvin Bassey absolutely sort of bullied him off the ball and sent him flying. Bassey's quite a unit himself, as long with Romero, and the home fans were enjoying that. But Romero was at the heart of everything in that first half. There was one moment where he made a really good clearance and he went down holding his knee, and there was a worry for a second that he injured himself again, but he did come through, I think 67, 68 minutes okay, so fingers crossed he's fine. And there were moments here, because this is what I mean by the sort of end of season feel to the game. It wasn't just that, it was the atmosphere as well. I mean, Fulham, I've been here so many times over the years covering various games in various divisions, Championship and the Premier League, and I love it. It's a lovely old ground with the old seats and everything, but they are quite I don't know about to say posh crowd, but it's not exactly the most intimidating atmosphere at times, and times it can be quite quiet in whatever games, and compared to some of the raucous atmospheres that can be created at other grounds around the country. And with Tottenham and the way, the away fans are always chanting away, but throughout matches, but even they are, in a moment in this season, given how it's going in the league, where it was quite quiet on that front, and to the point where you could hear Romero and hear some of the players a lot more than you would do at most games. Almost hark back to a bit of COVID times when you could hear everything the players were saying. You could hear Romero at one point completely bawling over at Jed Spence to get back into a defensive position. You could see what a leader he can be. You also heard, I think it was Andres Pereira, have a bit of a squeak at one point in the second half, which was picked up on by the crowd. Found that quite funny, but it sort of underlined this sort of pretty placid atmosphere here, and the football on the pitch wasn't much more exciting in that first half. Unsurprising, to be honest, to see Postecoglou make changes at half-time. As I said, Bissouma and Johnson were hooked. On came Son and Bergvall. I thought they made them much better. Some looked pretty sharp, to be fair. Bergvall's looking in a really good amount of confidence right now. He's just a really, really good, exciting player, isn't he, at the moment? They did improve, but by the same token, Fulham made their changes, and actually that's what won the game. Rodrigo Muniz came off the bench, along with Ryan Sessegnon. I haven't actually mentioned Ryan Sessegnon yet. I don't know if Spurs fans really want to hear it, but he's obviously the big story from the national point of view from this game, with his second goal, or the second goal for Fulham. But First of all, Muniz, I mean, I remember that in this fixture last season, I believe it was Radu Draguzin's full debut, and Muniz ripped him apart on that game, to be fair. He scored twice, he was brilliant, he was in really good form at that point. And he scored the opener here. It was good work from Adama Traore, another sub who came on to sort of a half clearance that Spurs had made. He managed to give it back to Squeaky Pereira, who laid it on to Muniz, who found the corner, and it was 1-0. And at that point, you just, like I say, the inevitability about this, you've just seen it so many times over the years. Fulham not blowing teams away at all, but they just seem to find a way at times in games like this where there's not loads on the line, and that's where it felt like it went wrong for Tottenham. Like I said, but then they had that Bergvall incident penalty in about the 85th minute. They didn't get it. 2 minutes later, Sessegnon comes on in the 87th minute, and I think it's about 100 odd seconds plus, where he runs after a loose, a sort of high ball, which Ben Davies somehow doesn't seem to deal with, doesn't clear. Sessegnon holds off Davies and cracks it into the far corner for what was, as Marcus Silva said afterwards, quite an emotional moment for him. It's his first goal back at Craven Cottage since re-signing for the club, but obviously against Tottenham. This is a player who I remember covering Fulham in the Championship when they were I think they got promoted, and it was ahead of the 2018 World Cup, and he was playing that well that I was suggesting he may even be in with a shout for England at that point. He was only 18, but he was absolutely brilliant. He obviously got that move to Tottenham for 25 million. Spurs thought they'd signed one of the most exciting young English players around, and very sadly for his point of view, knee injuries in particular, or just injuries, completely ruined his time at Spurs. He just never got a chance. He kept having these problems, reduced him to 57 appearances and 3 goals in 5 years, and I think only made 1 appearance under Postecoglou. Spurs actually had the opportunity to extend his contract by an extra option for a year, and they decided not to do it, which sort of underlines how much his time was decimated by injuries. So of course the storyline was going to go that he comes up and scores a brilliant goal. I think it might have been with his weaker foot. I have to watch it again, to kill off Spurs today, his old club. Didn't celebrate out of respect for his old team, really. But yeah, a great moment for him. But obviously a sort of another almost not laughable moment from Tottenham's season, but just what makes you sort of half laugh ironically is just that seems to be the way it's going. Even players who couldn't even turn out for Spurs last season due to injury, and then they moved them on, are scoring bangers against them this season. It just seems to be the way it's going. So there you go. Finally, on to Ange's comments. I asked him about 15 league defeats and that record. It's not good enough, and he said it isn't good enough, unacceptable, nowhere near good enough. He has said that a few times this season. He said didn't feel like they were played off the park here performance-wise, but they gave a soft goal away. And he says he doesn't feel like it's becoming a habit. Some of this sort of poor streak they've had in the season. He certainly hopes that the focus hasn't gone off the league, given it almost understandable if players start treating the league this season as not as important as the Europa League, because it just probably isn't at this stage. But he certainly doesn't want to sort of have an acceptance filter into the squad that these kind of mediocre and bad results are becoming a part of the norm. He definitely doesn't want that, and that's something he reiterated. But the fundamentals are they have just gone and lost their 15th game of the season. What else did he say? He said that interesting about the Bergvall incident when it came to the penalty that was turned down. He said he'd let the officials. Let the officials deal with that, but he said that he. Sorry, I'm just being slightly put off by stewards wanting me to leave, so I'll wrap it up soon. He said that he feels like the fact that Spurs don't have all this sort of carry on, as he put it, around incidents, sort of hurts the club, and that there's never really any noise against incidents when they go against Spurs, as opposed to headlines being in the national newspapers all week when they have one that goes their way. I presume he's referencing the goal that Spurs scored against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup semi-final first leg. Bergvall probably should have been ruled out, but there won't be even a sentence written on this. I push back on that massively. I mean, I literally have written a sentence on it, or a couple of sentences on it in my match reports. I don't really know what he's talking about in that particular scenario, but that's the way he feels. And then on Bissouma, I mentioned that he said that he feels like he can let games drift. Already covered that already. So I guess just to wrap it up, yeah, another poor defeat from Spurs' point of view in this miserable league campaign, which the end of it just can't come quick enough. There you go. Cheers, guys.